A study of the parables of Jesus. Lesson 3. A parable about patches and wineskins. These parables are found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We'll first read Matthew 9:14 through 17. Then John's disciples came and asked him, "How is it that we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not?" Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, then they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. Neither do they pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved." Let's turn to Mark (2:18). Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. Some people came and asked Jesus, "How is it that John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees are fasting, but yours are not?" Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom fast while he is with them? They cannot, so long as they have him with them. But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and on that day they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. If he does, the new piece will pull away from the old, making the tear worse. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, he pours new wine into new wineskins." And now Luke 5:33 through 39. I'll give you a moment to get there. They said to him, "John's disciples often fast and pray, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees. But yours go on eating and drinking." Jesus answered, "Can you make the guests of the bridegroom fast while he is with them? But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them. In those days they will fast." He told them this parable. You will notice that this is the only record of the three that actually calls it a parable. But I'm assuming that they are all parables for good reasons. "No one tears a patch from a new garment and sews it on an old one. If he does, he will have torn the new garment, and the patch from the new will not match the old. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the new wine will burst the skins. The wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, new wine must be poured into new wineskins. And no one, after drinking the old wine, wants the new, for he will say, 'The old is better.'" If this is the same parable, it is the only one recorded in 3 of the Gospels. And it is fitting that it starts out I've already given my reasons for not starting with the parable of the sower, although that's traditionally the way parables are studied. Some scholars in the past have doubted that they are the same parable because of minor differences in setting, circumstances, and wording. This raises the question of parallel accounts in the Gospels, which differ in setting, circumstances, and wording. I believe that the best explanation for these differences is that Jesus, like any good teacher, used his best teaching in different settings and circumstances and adapted his wording to be appropriate to the occasion. The only way of reaching more than one audience would be to have, he would have to teach the same material over and over. This would have produced just the situation that we encounter here. The best way to study such texts is to study them together and determine whether these minor differences in setting, circumstance, and wording affect the meaning of the material. The background of these parables. Excluding a tiny minority of extremely wealthy people, the inhabitants of the first century Palestine were very poor. To get some feeling for their poverty, they probably lived on less than 3 or 4 cents a day per person. Clothing was expensive and in short supply, as was leather, from which wineskins were made by sewing up a single skin from a sheep or goat into a tightly enclosed container. The wise homemaker would never use expensive new cloth which had not been pre-shrunk to patch an old garment. Likewise, a winemaker would never use a new wineskin in which to place new fermenting wine. Now, the meaning or significance of the parables as a whole. The central theme in all of these is when it is appropriate to fast, that is, to mourn, for fasting is an outward symbol of inward mourning. The disciples of the Pharisees and John probably fasted on the customary days of the week, Monday and Thursday. And the Pharisees, we know, fasted on both Monday and Thursday, because one of them, bragging about how spiritual he was, said, "I fast twice in the week." Jesus' disciples did not fast at all. The rationale Jesus gave for his disciples not fasting was that his presence among them as the bridegroom made fasting inappropriate or even impossible. However, when he left him, it would become appropriate. It seems obvious to me that the minor differences in setting, circumstances, and wording do not affect the meaning of the parables in any material way. Now let's look at the meaning of the individual elements in the parables. The anonymous mender of garments and the equally anonymous winemaker are incidental and have no significance. That would be allegorizing if you gave them meaning and significance. They're just necessary to tell a story about mending garments and wineskins. You cannot have a mending garment that mends itself. You've got to have a mender. The old garment and the new wineskins are the old covenant and its traditions. especially in the context of being in opposition to what the Pharisees did. It is the traditions that are old and outmoded. The new garment and the new wineskins are the new covenant, especially the new covenant that the Messianic King is issuing, and a new covenant that will include all people, not just the Jews. Now, as I promised, I'm going to suggest ways that you can make the teaching of these parables your own. First of all, I want to ask you, have you ever had any experiences like those of the garment mender or the winemaker? If you have, and I think most of us probably have, make a list of 2 or 3 of them. Then answer this question. Are your experiences similar or different from those in the parables? If they are the same, how does it help you understand the meaning of the parables? If they're different, how do you account for the differences? Because some of you, they'll be alike, and some they won't. Make a list from your own life occasions. And this is the important one. Make a list of the occasions on which you think it is appropriate to fast. And a list when you think it would be completely inappropriate to fast or even feast. Thank you. Good day.